happened with Walmart? What happened with Costco? What happened with Toys R Us?
With the big box retailers, they're generally not there to seek out new products. I saw them just running from meeting to meeting. And they loved it, like, yeah, this is really cool, send us a sample. Right?
So you didn't get any orders there?
No, I took some orders from smaller retailers.
Vlad, I'm dying to know your background. Where do you come from?
Originally, I'm from Ukraine. And actually, my father, he gave me a lot of inspiration. He was in venture capital and currencies.
Did he help fund this business?
Unfortunately, very early on, he passed away, which kind of put me in a position where everything we had, my mom and I had, was taken away from us. So it's crazy to think about it, but since I was a little boy, I knew that I had a mission to like get it all back, to kind of like for my father to succeed him, to also become successful, to continue his journey. So by the time I started this business, I was 18 years old.
So you came here wanting to live the American dream.
That's exactly it.
How old are you now, if you don't mind?
21, just turned.
Wow.
Did you start this business? Did you raise any money?
No, we didn't raise any money. I started with my best friend at the time, and we together pulled our money and we financed the prototyping, the production.
What happened to the friend?
My partner was in the back end, and I feel like he didn't feel connected to the business.
So does he still own part of it?
He still owns 15%.
15?
15, 1-5. So I own the rest, 85.
And he's not there anymore?
No, he's not there.
Well, at the other blocks, I can create stuff like this.
I disagree.
Not bendable.
Actually, I would ask you, would you be able to make a crown? Would you be able to make a watch?
And do you have a patent on it?
Yes, I applied for 2 patents, and yesterday got my design patent granted.
Good for you.
So the design is of the shape of the piece.
The design is exactly how the piece looks like.
That's useful. I have to admit, this is interesting because it does a few things. The bendability plus the pixelation artwork is kind of different. Years ago, I sold my company to Mattel, and I worked there for a year and a half, and I got a pretty good dose of the understanding of the toy industry. I'm going to make you an offer. The only way I see for this to work is that you actually partner with another toy company that's going to get this into their product line. They would probably license it in perpetuity, pay you a royalty. I would do that deal, but I want 30%. In other words, I'll give you the 100K with a giant contingency. I have no interest in investing in this unless I can put it into a very large toy manufacturer that provides marketing and distribution globally.
This is actually something that goes against my original strategies. My strategy is to really build out the brand, where it's a necessity for these big retailers to carry my product, because they have kids coming into the front door and asking, hey, where's Spin Blocks?
I think Barbara kind of helped them kind of think through that on the spot. I mean, I didn't get a chance because I ran out of time doing all the research post-filing. But I wanted to highlight that part about we're going for a design patent versus a utility. Kind of walk through the differences.
They sounded impressed with the design patent, but should they have been?
Well, design patents are not for protecting functionality, only for protecting the ornamental appearance. But they can have a functional effect, right? They can be functional, but what's the rights are just for protecting the way something looks. And so when they are vulnerable to designing around, because any substantial change to the shape or the look will not be infringing. And so that's one risk. I think here he kept that shape, and I think that is quite powerful. It's a great way to use a design patent. The 2 utility patents he had pending, they did not ever issue. At least I couldn't find any evidence of that. So it's a great way to affordably protect a specific shape. And what's cool about design patents is you don't need paragraph after paragraph of written description. It's really all about the drawings. So anyway, I want to highlight that point. At least, I was able to impress the panel of sharks.
Yeah, and I think to your point on design patents, so one thing that I feel that it does protect against is someone else using your mold. So if you have a design patent for your specific shape and you have a mold made in the Czech Republic and they're producing your parts, if they're going to produce parts for another country that you don't have a patent in, well, I take that back because whatever, it's all US. So they can't just make that part and send it to another company in the US and sell it, because your design patent is exactly the thing that you're having manufactured in that mold. So that's some small piece of protection you do get with design.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if someone came to you with, a product like this, I think I would say, make sure that if you're going to go for only design, make sure that that's never going to change.
Yeah,
'Cause-
right.
which is a tall ask. They're still in business. I checked them out. I mean, they're selling online. They appear to, still be up and running. The actual, trademark to me seems a little descriptive, Matt. Pin block, but it's not. Oh, it's not. That's
I went and looked at the USPTO or USPTO in the toy category for pin block or pin blocks. Didn't see anything. I don't know if I would call it descriptive, because when I was first introduced to the brand pin block, don't know what that is, right? And it is somewhat suggestive of how the blocks work or what they look like, but it doesn't really speak to the building blocks themselves, in my estimation. So I would tell a client to go ahead and file that. One thing I did think was interesting is, well, a couple things. One, they don't have a trademark application, so I wanted a bit of fun to actually see if that went through. But second thing is, what I noticed in the pitch was the inventor was talking about pin block and pin blocks, and I think that's kind of confusing, because I understood the brand to be pin blocks, and that's even what the Shark Tank header said.
Oh, the plural, non-plural.
The plural form, right? So that's something that I would talk to a client about and just have them really hone in on and pick a lane. Is it going to be pin block or pin blocks, and just stick to that to avoid, muddying the waters in the future.
Yeah, I see they actually are using that circle R, so maybe misusing that designation. You said you couldn't find a registered mark.
Not in the United States, at least.
Okay. Oh God. Okay. Well, yeah.
What are the penalties using an R, a registered stamp, when you're not registered?
Nothing.
Okay. Good to know.
No.
Nothing. There's no trademark release. So,
Right.
yeah.
Something that comes across my I guess my advice to clients quite a bit is make sure to label, whether it be patent pending or a U.S. patent number. You're doing this quite a bit. Do you recommend that? What are some best practices for engraving or making sure that it's clearly identified the status of the product?
Well, you're always going to try to put it on the product if you can find some space for it. If it's a real small thing, like a little zipper pull or something like that, and you can't pull it off, put it on the packaging. Right. Always, that's a rule. You got to say that you're trying to get a patent. I run into that a lot, where it's people have patent pending and they'll keep it on there for years, and they shouldn't.
Yeah. I don't know if this is zero for saying patent pending and not really being. I think there might be. Did we talk to that before, Matt? There should be a slap on the wrist.
There should be, yeah, because it really, that's one thing that we're doing a lot, is kind of looking at what the state of the art is, and then inventing around it. So if there's like actual, published applications or published patents with the USPTO or foreign, we can actually see what they're calling out, and we can work around and come up with other options. But if it's just a patent pending, it's a black box for me. And so if I'm helping someone invent a product around something and it's patent pending, I'm kind of like, well, I don't know what I can kind of guess what they're trying to do and then try to get around it by just looking at the object. But that's a real problem. But that kind of speaks to the power of patent pending. Like one of the, I think, kind of a hidden power of the patent pending is that it is a black box. So if you file a provisional application and you put a product in the market and you say patent pending, me as a designer, inventor guy, I have no idea what this person's trying to claim. And so I am, kind of remiss to try to work against it.
And you don't know, often it'll take up to a year and a half sometimes before it'll actually get published. That's a huge period of time. Of course, they could decide not to file a non-provisional and just let the provisional go abandoned, and it never gets published. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I think there is some power to that unknown. Not saying provisional pending. That'd be a big mistake. Don't do that. Don't say don't see anything more than just those 2 words.
I can speak to like to invent that thing that Ukrainian guy was working on.
Yeah.
You know, if he came into our shop and he had a sketch and he had an idea, you know, we would design that up. We would focus on the connection points, and try to make that as funky as possible to kind of bring something new to the state of the art and teach somebody something to give you a shot at getting something like a utility patent. And then when it comes to the prototyping, that's actually a tricky product to prototype because 3D printers need to be calibrated. And so your accuracy on a 3D print is going to be plus or minus a couple thousandths of an inch, you know, on that small part. Now, if your fit is going to be needs to be so perfect for the thing to plug in and be removed in a way that feels good, that, you know, you might get a prints done on day 1 where they fit in perfect, and then that printer goes out of calibration a little bit after a week. Now the parts don't print so well.
Okay.
And so they don't fit like they used to. And so be hesitant to order, I'm going to order 10,000 of these things because half of them are going to fit and half of them are going to be, or a quarter are going to be too loose and a quarter are going to be too tight. And so for that kind of product, we would 3D print, but we would do it in really small sections. One cool thing with the state of the art is there's some really good materials coming out. So there are some materials that have a little bit more flex in them. So you can kind of approximate an ABS PC plastic, because the slide, not only how tight it is, but the surface properties of those parts are going to be really critical to how that slide works. And each 3D print is going to have a layer. Each layer gets printed like that. And so we would orient those parts at a 45-degree angle so that you don't have the hoops going on top of each other, because that's going to make it grab a little bit more. So the orientation of the print will give you a better prototype. But at the end of the day, I would suggest dial in on what you think works, get some prints, take some calipers to it to make sure your sizing is just right, and then get a cheap aluminum mold made. You can kick out 100 of these things to dial in on the fit. And once you absolutely know that the material property, the material you're using, the fit is perfect, then you would go to mass production and do 50 cavities on the single mold that shoots them all at once of all the same color, and so that's kind of the progression. But that would be a tricky thing to prototype. And you're never going to, like, your kind of goal with prototyping is to get the most production quality product you can. So the right material, the right flex, try to get all the properties as good as you can to be as close to production as you can be. But the thing is, with prototyping, you're never going to quite get there. There's always going to be this 5 or 10% difference when you go through a production manufacturing process. So injection molded parts are going to function different and feel different and look different than a 3D print. And so you can get it really far. And then with the mass production, you tweak and dial in. And so, like, for that part, you might make a mold and the parts don't quite fit right. Well, you can always take that mold, set it back on the CNC machine and buzz off just a little bit more material. Or if they're a little too loose, you can weld in some more metal and redo it. So molds can be adjusted after the fact. It's a little bit, there's some expense there, but it's not the same cost as like redoing the mold completely. So if you have a product, you get it really far, you can tweak the mold to some extent. And if you want it totally different, then you have to trash the mold and make a new one.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's what I hear, what excites me is you're providing these big building blocks of confidence jumps. Confidently the client saying, oh my gosh, this is really possible. You can get them to the point like feel that curve, on their material and get excited about the next step of, moving forward and bringing it to market. So